Hey guys, we're back. It's Will. Yeah, sweet. We're in a public place today and not talking about the book today. So definitely switch up. We're gonna talk about something a little different, which is being there for someone. Yeah, that one kind of hits close to home with me. You know, I've had a fair amount of people in my life who have gone through hard things, and a fair amount of people who have come to me during those hard times. And I wanted to share some things today, off the top of my head, about how I handle that and what's worked for me, and what's really made me feel connected to those around me. Just about like an hour or two ago, I was talking to a friend, not a super close friend of mine, but she's been struggling with some things, and not a lot of people, she feels like, have been there for her the way that she would like them to be. I think that's pretty common. I think that everyone has their own problems, everyone has their own issues in their life, and it's really easy to get caught up in your own and not see that someone so close to you and so significant in your life is going through something and could really use a friend. And that's one of the things that I've loved about meditation and pursuing learning my own sense of self, and learning about my own emotional issues and my thought patterns and everything going on internally. Through that, I'm able to meet people at a certain depth that I wouldn't have been able to prior. It's kind of like the saying, you can only meet people at the depth that you've met yourself, right? More importantly, though, it's helped me get out of my own head to see other people and to see them more clearly. One thing that's a benefit to that largely is the way that I'm able to be present in conversations and handle those type of difficult talks. A lot of people, when they're trying to be there for someone else and they're struggling with their own stuff, they have this thing in their head which is like they're dealing with someone else's problems, and that's why they don't want to do it. Like they have enough of their own. I disagree with that. I don't think when someone's coming to me with their problems, I'm dealing with them. I am simply hearing them and being present with them. There's a difference. Dealing implies taking on emotional baggage that isn't yours. No one's asking you to do that, and I can imagine that the person that is going through these whatever hard thing that they're dealing with, the last thing they want is to put that on someone else and make them feel shittier. And that's why a lot of people don't reach out and talk about their problems, because when people come to those around them, they don't know how to handle it, and then now they're starting to, they overcompensate and they feel this need to, do something about it. And that's largely a reflection of how they handle their own inner turmoil in their life. An emotional problem arises, and the first thing they jump to is, I need to change this, or I need to fix this, or I need to avoid this. Let's talk about something else, or let me distract myself with something else. And that is reflected in the conversations that that person will have with someone else who's struggling. That person in their life, will come to them and be like, hey, I'm dealing with something. And if you notice, you're the person that's like, hey, well, let's do something, take your mind off of it, right? Or you instantly go to, well, have you tried this yet? And trying to find a solution to the problem, right? See, that there's sincerity in that, in the sense that you just want the person to feel better. However, that ties back to the whole dealing with the person's problems, taking emotional responsibility that isn't yours. You're not in control of their emotions. That is a fictitious obligation that you are putting on yourself that does you no good and doesn't do the other person any good either. Because what you do indirectly when you handle things that way, and when you handle those things with yourself, is you're telling yourself that these negative emotions, these negative feelings, these hard conversations aren't okay. And they shouldn't be had. And that doesn't solve the problem. That doesn't solve, quote unquote problem. The problem is even objective. To even refer what someone else is going through as a problem, save it. It's not. It's just something that's going on. You label it as a problem, now there's this negative connotation around it as it's something bad, right? It's not. It's just life. There's harder emotions that people feel. There's harder situations. There's more difficult things, for sure. However, the way you view that as something negative rather than positive makes getting through whatever it is even more difficult, right? So what do? If you don't want to tell them like, hey, here's the solution, or oh, hey, like, why don't we go do this? Why don't you take your mind off this? Like X, Y, and Z. All this is a reflection of the relationship with yourself. So you might think of this in the context of being there for another person, but think of it in the same context as being there for yourself, right? What you do, I found it to be a lot more straightforward than I once thought. Not easier said than done, but you be present with them, right? You try to understand them. You give them a space where they feel your presence and they feel your openness and your receptiveness, because you are out of your own head and you are trying to put your head in theirs. You are trying to be curious, right? You aren't afraid of what it is that they're feeling and what might come up with those feelings if they're felt, okay? And through that, osmosis they're gonna feel that comfortability that you have with these difficult things, and that is gonna give them more strength and courage to feel the same comfortability and letting it come up and come out, and so they can feel it through rather than avoiding it, right? Allowing this space for them is a beautiful thing. I mean, it fosters connection. You take you get out of your own head and you put yours in theirs, and now whatever problems that whatever things that they're dealing with, they no longer feel alone in them. And that's part of what makes dealing with difficult things internally so difficult, is because you feel alone. You don't get it and you don't feel like anyone else does, right? And then that seems like an unbearable feat to overcome if there's no understanding to it. So you create that understanding. You create that curiosity through this openness and this calmness. Someone comes to you all over the place, all freaked out. You're just like, hey, what's up? Yeah? Can you tell me more? Like, curious and non-judgmental. You're not trying to change them. You're not trying to fix them. You're trying to understand them, right? That's going to help you understand yourself too. I love talking to people and I love listening to people and the things that they're going through, because it helps me understand more about myself, and creating that space for someone to be open and feel accepted with whatever they are going through. It's really a beautiful thing. It really is. And through that acceptance is where there is actual growth, right? You can't escape your feelings, you can't escape your fears, you can't escape hard conversations. You can shove them under the rug, but then you're going to be stepping on rocks for the rest of your life, okay? So offering someone your presence and your attention and your calmness, and it can be as simple as like, it's okay. You don't need to say much more, just remind them that it's okay. Give them a space. Let them be heard, let them be accepted. And patience. Patience is really important. And it's not something that everyone just knows, you know, you gotta, through experience, you build things like this. And I can describe the connection as simple as two hearts just, like one heart holding out a hand to the other saying, I'm here. And a lot of the times that's all the person needs. You know, they don't need you to come in and solve their life. They don't need you to go do something fun for them to, you know, distract them. Just a friend, you know? It's simple. So, yeah, let me know your guys' thoughts. Tell something new, different. Yeah. Be a friend. Be a good friend. See ya.